Hi everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Rob and I'm part of the Bishop pair along with my colleague Shane, who you'll hopefully see in one of the other videos that we'll be posting on our Global Chess channel. So over the coming weeks and months, we're hoping to post quite a few videos on chess openings, on chess news, any chess drama like the cheating scandal, and hopefully some updates from Title Tuesday as well, because my dad will be playing there quite regularly. So just to give you an introduction about myself, so my name is Rob. I'm a medical student in England, but quite a keen chess player on the side. I'm rated approximately 2000 in rapid and standard play chess. My username is Phaser180 on chess.com. If you'd like to add me as a friend there or challenge me to some games, I'm always happy to accept those. And yeah, thank you again for clicking on my video, and I hope you enjoy today's video about the recent sexism scandal in chess. So, unless you've been hiding under a rock for the last few weeks, you would have heard about the Magnus Carlsen, Hans Niemann cheating scandal, and we'll be making a video on that at some point. But hopefully, you've also heard about the recent sexism scandal in chess from a couple of weeks ago. So, what happened was grandmaster from Belarus slash Israel now, I think, called Ilya Smirin, was commentating for FIDE on the women's Grand Prix event. He was commentating, I think it was his first day on the job, commentating on a game between Jina Zhu and Katerina Lagno. And yeah, he caused some controversy. So I thought I'd just mention that to you in case you weren't aware of it. So yeah, just looking at this article from the BBC News website, it's actually quite amazing that chess has been in the news so much recently. Not for the best reasons, but I'm not sure if there's no such thing as bad publicity, I think. So anyway, some of the things, just looking through the article, some of the things that he said. So he said some sensible things, like potentially why is the woman's grandmaster type title separate to that of a grandmaster? Because it is easier to become a women's grandmaster title than just a grandmaster. So maybe it devalues the women's game to make it easier to become a women's GM instead of a normal GM. So that's a sensible enough point, possibly. However, he did also say some things like maybe chess is not for women, and he praised one of the players for playing like a man. So yeah, um, and his co-commentator was not too happy, understandably, with what he was saying, and he was promptly sacked, and that was his one and only day in the job. So yeah, so I thought it might be interesting just to make you aware of this scandal. You can have a read about it if you weren't aware of it. And I thought I'd just tell you a little bit more about Ilya Smirin as well, um, by illustrating one of his games because he's actually a very famous player from the 80s and 90s in the Soviet Union. And one of his games is actually covered in this book, which I'd recommend you to get if you haven't seen it before, The World's Greatest Chess Games. And yeah, I'm just going to run through now one of his games against Alexander Belyavsky from 1989. And yeah, I hope you find it useful and let me know if you have any comments. Okay, so let's have a look at the game. So in this game, Smirin was playing as white against Alexander Belyavsky in the 1989 USSR Championship. So at this time, both of these guys was two of the top grandmasters in the Soviet Union. So get ready for a very high quality game. So Smirin starts with the best move for white, plays e4. Belyavsky replies with e5, which a lot of grandmasters do, keep it nice and symmetrical at the start. It was definitely the most popular move in the candidates. So anyway, Smirin plays knight f3, so attack the pawn on e5. And thankfully, Belyavsky doesn't play knight f6 and take us down the boredom that is the Petrov defense, and plays knight c6. And then, as we know, white has quite a few different moves it can play here. It can play d4 with the Scotch, which is my personal favorite. It can play bishop c4 with the Italian opening or the gioco piano. But in this game, Smirin plays bishop b5, so he takes us into Roy Lopez, or the Spanish opening. So we should be making a video on the Roy Lopez specifically in a few weeks' time, so please stay tuned for that. But just a quick introduction to it. So there's two main moves that black can play here. They can play knight f6, which is the Berlin defense, which is more common for the Berlin draw that we've seen in the candidates this year with Hikaru and Nepo. And the other main move is the move that was played in this game, which is a6, sorry, which is the Morphy defense. And then white has two main moves here. You can either take the knight, which is the exchange variation, or you can play what Smirin actually played, which is bishop a4. Just move out of the way. Move out of the way of the attack. Black plays the main move, knight f6, attack the pawn on e4, and white just completely ignores it and castles kingside. Black can take the pawn here. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's probably the main move, but that's not what we see in this game. I'll explain what happens if you do take the pawn in one of the later videos. It's a bit too complicated to go through right now. But black plays bishop e7, which makes it the closed Roy Lopez defense opening. White plays rook e1, finally defends that pawn on e4, keeps it a bit more solid. Black plays b5, driving the bishop out of a4, and there's only one move for white, bishop moves to b3. So this is all theory, by the way, all played thousands of times in the Roy Lopez, very well-known opening, very theoretical, not an easy opening for beginners to start with, so I wouldn't recommend if you're below 1400 to be playing this opening, but hopefully you'll learn something from watching this game, no matter what your rating is anyway. So black plays d6, kind of solidifies the center a bit more, defends that e5 pawn, maybe allows the bishop to come out to d7 or g4 later on, depends what he's thinking really. White plays c3, giving the bishop an extra square on c2 to come to if needed later on, and also preparing d4, that center burst, which is going to happen at some point. Black castles kingside. White plays h3, which is simply just to stop either the bishop or the knight coming to g4 for black, which would be a bit of a pain in the position for white. And then now we have the first move that looks a little bit odd, knight to b8, like undeveloping the knight. It looks completely ridiculous probably for most people who don't know this variation, but it's called the Breyer defense of the Roy Lopez. And what's going to happen is black's going to rotate that knight around b8 to d7, and then maybe move it further after that as well. But it does look a bit strange, but it's been played many, many times for black. So white finally makes that move into the center that he's been preparing with c3 earlier. He plays d4. Nice strong center for white at the moment. And obviously black, because he moved the knight back to b8, it looks a little bit passive right now. But as you can see from the eval bar, it's perfectly fine. So black plays knight bd7, as I mentioned would be coming earlier. White plays knight bd2. Not the main move for white, as you can tell from the engine there. I think usually a4 gets played in this position, but yeah, knight bd2, preparing knight f1 and knight g3 to come quite soon. Bishop b7 from black, making use of that open diagonal or semi-open diagonal at the moment. White moves the bishop back to c2, just kind of guarding the e4 pawn a bit more, and maybe preparing a4, b4 to come in the future. Black slides the rook over to e8. White plays knight f1, and knight g3 will be coming quite soon as well. All of this is theory, by the way, all well-known Roy Lopez theoretical stuff. I won't go into it too much at this point. Black moves the bishop back to f8. So another undeveloping move, like with the knight to b8 earlier, looks a little bit odd, but you can still see it's perfectly fine for both sides. Knight g3 for white, And as you can see, that f5 square is looking very tempting right now for the knight. Black plays g6 to stop that white knight on g3 coming to either f5 or h5 at some point. But it looks a little bit ugly, if I'm honest. He'll probably maybe look to bring the bishop into g7 afterwards and kind of fianchetto the bishop, but a little bit unusual in the Royal Lepez to do that. White plays bishop g5, pinning the knight to the queen. Black plays h6, driving the bishop out straight away. And white moves the bishop back to d2, because obviously if he went to h4, g5's coming and your bishop's trapped. So he moves the bishop back to d2, but all of these last few moves looked a bit better for white, to be honest, because this g6, h6 structure for black looks a little bit ugly, if I'm honest. Now we have bishop g7, making that fianchetto that black was looking for. White plays queen c1. So yeah, what's interesting about this move is that, as you can see, the engine wasn't a huge fan of it. It wasn't the main move, at least. It wanted a4 to be played. But yeah, it looks perfectly natural to just go for that h6 pawn, which he's got the bishop and queen attacking it now. So black has to either defend it with the king or move the pawn forward. So he defends it with the king. Just to go through what would happen if he played h5 instead, which looks perfectly natural as well. But seems like you see the eval bar is going to 1.1 to white now, so it's a bit better because it allows the bishop into h6, kind of infiltrating the fianchetto. And yeah, I think this was actually played, this game. Yeah, this version of the game was actually played by Smirin against a different opponent in the same tournament, actually, where Smirin was also white and he ended up winning this game. The moves were queen d2, and then they swapped the bishops, so the queen is now infiltrated into the king side for black. Queen f6, a4, just suddenly decides to move on the queen side. Knight to f8, d5, white just taking more and more space in the black position. Black counter strikes with c6, trying to get something going. White slides the rook over to d1. Black plays c5 just to try and keep that d file closed, that's why the rook was moved there, try and open up the d file for white. But yeah, now white just pushes more and more on the queen side with b4. Knight d7 happened. Bishop to d3, pushed on c4. As you can see, the engine is slowly getting better and better for white. Moves the bishop out of the way. Rook over to b8. Rook a3. I think we know what's coming now. White's going to double up on the a file. And yeah, just from reading what it says in the book, so white went on to win this game thanks to the double rook on the a file. Double rooks on the a file there. But anyway, that wasn't what happened this game. Black played the better move, which was king h7. Just defending the pawn rather than moving it forward. So white plays h4. And as you can see, engine does not like that. It looks like a perfectly natural move to try and infiltrate the king side with the h-pawn push, but yeah, engine wasn't a fan because of e takes d4, but it wasn't played in this game. In this game we had d5, so all the four pawns just came out to meet each other in the center of the board. Bit of a Mexican standoff going on there at the moment, so something's got to happen, something's got to break this. So white played e takes d5. Black plays e takes d4. Looks a bit like a semi-Tarrasch exchange position at the moment. And then we have the first big mistake of the game from Smirin. He plays knight takes d4, which looks perfectly natural just to take the pawn back and win a pawn. But the issue with it is that it allows knight to e5. There's nothing blocking the knight from coming to that square anymore, now that the knight's no longer on f3. Um, Smirin actually plays the best move, a very hard move to find, quite honestly. He plays knight to e6. Um, and the purpose behind this move is if black plays the natural looking pawn takes knight, now the pawn is blocking the rook from the defense of this knight on e5. So we can rook takes e5, knight g4 for black to attack the rook, but now white can move the rook over to h5 because this pawn on g6 is pinned by the bishop on c2. And now we've got the bishop, the queen, and the rook attacking this pawn on h6. And as you can see from the eval, it's much better position for white. So instead of doing that, black takes the pawn on d5. And hopefully you can see that bishop, queen, both attacking this pawn on g2. So it's technically mate in one here for black. But Mr. Smirin, he's 2600 GM at this time in his life, so he wasn't going to miss that. So he played knight f4, simultaneously defending the pawn on g2 and attacking the queen on d5. So black needs to move the queen out of the way, so he plays queen c6. So yeah, at this point, white just wants to continue with his kingside attack, which has stalled a little bit in the last few moves. So he plays h5, pushes the pawn on, can't be taken back because of the bishop on c2, still in the pin to the king. Black plays rook a d8, and white takes the pawn on g6, check, and black takes it back. As we can see, eval is dead even, complete draw right now. Nothing much that can be done from either side. But this game, I wouldn't be showing you this game if it was a boring draw. So something's going to happen. So we have the second mistake of the game from white, queen b1. Very interestingly, in the book, the greatest games book that I told you about, that I'm taking this game from, they actually really liked this move. They gave it an exclamation mark, queen b1. But as you can see, things have really moved on with the engine since then because Stockfish does not like queen b1 in this position because, well, it gives up the bishop basically on d2. Um, and I guess the reason for it is white thinks that they can get the material back, and they can. So bishop takes g6 check, happens, and king g8. And then white takes the rook, and black takes it back with the knight. So now we're equal on material, and right now the black king looks the one that's a bit more exposed. White king looks pretty safe. The knight's guarding g2. It looks pretty safe for white right now. However, queen c1 happens, and this is the third and the worst mistake of the game from Smirin. As you can see, look at that eval bar, it's dropped to minus 3.4. So black's playing win. Can you see it? You can see it there on the right hand side. The engine is telling you his rook takes f2. Yeah, so it's the first of two brilliant moves in a row actually from Beliavsky. Best move for white here is to play rook e2 and to kind of just ignore that rook, just let him have the pawn and move on. But Smirin just takes the rook. He maybe doesn't see, I don't know, but he decides to just call Beliavsky's bluff in this position. And then we have the second brilliant move in a row, and this one is really good move. Knight d3 check. So he's sacrificing another piece, Beliavsky. Knight takes d3. So as you can see down the bottom, 7 points of material black is up in this position. But white's king is in the open. Queen takes g2 check. Now white has no pawns around the king. No defense of what's happening at all right now. King to e3, the only square he can go to. Black plays knight d6, looking for knight c4 check on the next move. Obviously, Smirin is up 6 points of material still in this game. He's he has two rooks on the board and black has none. But yeah, he's in such a dangerous position. But if he can somehow get through this with 6 points of material up, he's going to win the game. But he just has to survive. Let's see what happens. So white plays rook f1, trying to stop the queen f3 happening very soon. But yeah, black plays. Yeah, the best move was actually queen d1 in that position. Let's have a look what happens if white plays queen d1. That was the better way of stopping queen f3 check. Black would play bishop f6, threatening bishop g5 on the next move. And then knight e5 would be the best move, just giving up the knight on g3. But Smirin is still up a whole piece, so not too worried about giving away material as long as his king can get back to safety. King to d2, bishop e4, looking for queen d3 check at some point. Queen g4 check, just ignore it. Bishop g5, king to e2. Now you take the knight. Now the material is back to equal, but white's king is still stuck in the middle of the board, still very open and exposed. King to f1, trying to desperately get back to safety. Pawn to h5, queen h3. And yeah, as you can see from the engine, it's minus 4.7. I'm actually worse, minus 5. So yeah, black is just going to move all of his material into this attack. Knight f5, knight into e3 check, and the white king is just so exposed. He's going to have to lose more material to try and survive this. Anyway, back to the game. So instead of that, white played rook f1, and now we're at minus 10, I believe. White plays king f4, queen d5, which is, hopefully you can see, next move queen g5 would be checkmate if white just plays a3, for example. Queen g5 would be checkmate here. So yeah, white doesn't do that. He moves the king over to g4, extending the game a little bit longer. Bishop c8 check. That king is still going to keep running. There's not much, hasn't got far to go to anymore though. As we can see, queen g5 is not an option because queen takes queen. So black plays queen d8, check. King is still running up to h5 this time. And queen e8 check. As we can see, he's mate in 7. Tough one to spot, but you know this king is running out of squares. Queen e7 check, just slowly moving that queen closer with every check. King h5. Now knight e3. Yeah, and in this position, white resigned. As you can see, it's mate in 5. Just to show you what would happen, the best move here is actually just to take the knight. Queen takes queen, rook f4, just trying to block that queen from accessing the king. Queen e8 check, king h4, queen e7 check, rook f6, put it in the way, but just takes it. King h5 and queen g5 checkmate. So that's the end of the game. I hope you enjoyed this game. Hope you learned a little bit about the Roy Lopez, and we're interested to see about Ilya Smirin and his background and how he actually played the game. If you liked the video, then please subscribe and please come back to watch our future videos. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.